What is up, gamers? Welcome back to Game Brigade. My name is Brian. If you're new here, thank you for joining me. Remember to smash that like button and join the community. Today, we're going to be talking with Jamie Jolly, the lead designer and co-owner for Shadowmore Games, as we discuss their newest game, Avalon, the Riven Veil. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. Okay, Jamie, so thank you for joining me today on our interview. You are the lead designer, owner for Shadowmore Games, is that correct?
Yeah, co-founder, but
co-founder?
Yeah, sort of, wearing co-founder means you get to wear lots and lots of hats, be responsible for lots of things. So,
and
yeah.
are you the lead designer? Are you the one who comes up with the concepts and designs for these games?
Yep, yeah. So I sort of do a bunch of the world building and the design work, development, and sort of head up art teams and story teams and things like that, trying to bring these things to life.
Awesome. So obviously we're talking about Avalon today because it's doing great on Kickstarter. It's funding really well. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I think a lot of people want to know this before we dive deeper into Avalon itself, is, you know, what were the motivations for creating a game that's kind of so different from your flagship game, Oathsworn? Like, you've got your boss battler. What takes you to going towards more of an area control game? What was the motivation for that?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, I suppose. Like I think a lot of designers are omni gamers. Like, at heart, we just play everything all the time. Like, I was just thinking, like, just this week, like, I've been painting up a Dark Angels army. I've been playing some Star Wars Unlimited, and I've been enjoying Unconscious Mind, and I've been doing, like, you know, all these, like, you know, and you think about that, it's quite a vast array of different types kind of things. And so the problem is, it's just there's not enough me to go around. I want to play everything. There's not enough time, and I want to make everything, and there's not enough time. So I've got like 50 odd games I want to make. Side things like spending 5 years in the sort of mud and blood of the deep wood was fantastic, right? It was the dream of being able to make this world and this story, and like just really getting to the heart of what it is to be putting an RPG in a box. That's what Oathsworn was for me. Like, just because I love being a dungeon master, I love like all the RPG sort of scene. I've loved all the sort of tabletop stuff we've done as well, and the board games things, you know, the dungeon crawling and boss battlers that we've had in the past. So it's like that chance of like manifesting that passion for that part of the gaming industry. And now the next one is sort of Avalon. And Avalon's this like just absolute love for area control games. You know, it's like starting with stuff like Risk. You know, we all started with Risk, right? And then we kind of moved on and stuff like that. And we've gone through this wonderful heritage of like El Grande and Blood Rage and all these like fantastic games and things. They're just because for me that type of game, it really, like, it feels probably the most epic thing you can do in a single sit down evening with a bunch of mates. Like, it's like you just have this entire war in a box. It's not an RPG in a box, it's a war in a box, and you just get the whole thing done in a single evening. And you get a story to tell. You're just romping around some giant map with huge armies and lords and stuff like that. So yeah, I've always wanted to make that. And being a Brit, I've always loved the Arthurian tale, right? I spent most of my sort of teenage years in my garden reading tales of chivalry and all that kind of jazz. And so, you can't swing a cat in England without hitting some sort of magical sword or something or another, or some ancient like Celtic deity or something. So yeah, we've got a lot of that around us, and so yeah, I just had the real passion for that sort of thing. So it just felt perfect. I was just really happy actually that, you know, it hadn't really happened that the Arthurian myth had found itself in a box yet when we started developing this. And so really cool to kind of just have a chance to do that and see what we can do with a kind of alternate history, Arthur and Mordred sort of story.
So, Jamie, what would you say that makes Avalon, the Riven Veil, stand out, though, amongst the crowd of other area control games? What makes yours unique or different against everything else?
Well, I think the area control games, there's not actually that many of them, like, really. There's, you know, it seems that often companies only do a couple of them, and they're quite expensive to do, obviously, because you've got these miniature ranges and things like that a lot of the time. Sometimes there are cheaper ways of doing them, but there's kind of like this specific group of games that sort of fit in this sort of area control dudes on a map kind of game. And they've all had these sort of different sort of target audiences and different approaches, different themes that they're trying to generate. We've had some wonderful, like, sort of big meta themes being covered by a bunch of these games before. And so one is obviously the fact that we're doing the Arthurian myth is something, but more the fact the journey, I think, of board games has been that, you know, some of these games like Risk is like 50 years old, you know, or more now. Mm-hmm. And so this ability to the journey of people getting more and more au fait with like heavier games and games that have more like design crunch to them, a bit more weightiness to them, a bit deeper strategies, deeper kind of levels to them, and wanting to trying to bring a bit more of that in there. So when I think about trying to want to make a real creamy area control game, something that's really rich. And so actually I've just been doing the last couple of days, been starting to roll out a series of deep dive strategic deep dives into the game. Yeah, and just sort of like being able to work out, like, just what goes into making these choices. And so there's plenty of, I wanted to really make sort of high level sort of games where there's a lot of interlacing mechanisms that are doing things. So just to give you an idea of particularly how this game might fit, though, is so we're sort of going for this kind of this quite high end, quite deep and rich area control game where it's not just moving dudes on a map and just having a simple fight, but it's more that you're actually having these kind of interlacing different strategies you're trying to do. So for instance, in this game, you've got your factions, and you have this board. Now in some games you might be able to like activate a battle straight away when you're during a thing. So you might go into a battle and boom, I'm taking it, it's mine. Yep. Yoink. Right. In this game, it's more about actually building up a strategic fight. So a lot of the actual medieval maneuvering that happened back in those days was, these wars could take days, battles could take days. It took a lot of like getting your armies in place and building up and all this sort of thing. And so this is kind of the spirit of this is coming through in the game, where the war phase happens at the end of a season. So you have like you have 2 or 3 seasons, and at the end of every season you have this big battle. But before that you have the preparation phase, and that's where you're building up in various regions. So you have this map, it's got up to 9 regions depending on the player count you have, and as you're going around, you're starting to be able to reveal through this misty exploration area, you're revealing these different regions, and those regions will have different values to you. They will have either like raw victory points that are really valuable, they might have artifacts in them or mythical beasts in them. Some of them will be less valuable than others, and because you're not winning those battles immediately, what you're doing is you have this kind of like this evolving state of information that you can kind of work out more and more where it is going to be valuable to you to place your units and invest your armies. And so because there are 9 regions, you want to win 5, 6 of them, but you can only invest in a few of them, and you want to be spreading yourself out, but also not too thinly, because you do want to win those battles when they come up. And so you've kind of got this big, massive, like high intensity phase that's going to happen at the end of every season, and you're kind of building up and preparing, moving your units around, and trying to position yourself in the best way. So you have this landscape of victory points you're going to be able to gain by winning certain victories in certain regions, gaining these artifacts, gaining Excalibur and the Grail and all that jazz. But so you've got this sort of layer of build up and strategy, which is very central to the thing. But you've also got, as we said, this part of exploration where you're flipping these tiles over, and so the state is changing as you play the game. You're revealing more information, and that information is going to allow you to kind of react to your opponents, to set up in new ways and different ways every time. The replayability of the game is huge because you have loads of different regions, and actually between each season all the regions will reset and actually shift and change within the mists, and the exploration will come back again and hide everything back. Yeah, and then on top of that, you've also got the prophecies. So the other thing that's happening is you've got these sort of meta objectives that you have throughout the seasons, which everybody is going for, and whoever is able to complete these prophecies first is going to get this like larger advantage. And the more quickly you do these prophecies, you get these bigger rewards and advantages on the favor track. And this is kind of trying to win the favor of the Lady of the Lake. So she's out there kind of like whispering prophecies over the land, saying who's going to be the next ruler of Avalon, and you're trying to complete these prophecies to make that true of yourself. And fulfill those for her. So as you go up this favor track, you get more and more rewards, which are valuable, but also whoever's furthest up that track at the end of the season, they're going to get Excalibur, and that's a super valuable artifact. It's going to help you win ties in battle, get a very strong lord, so you can be romping around with King Arthur with Excalibur, kicking butt and taking names. But this is kind of like another layer to it. So there's a bunch of different layers that are coming together in the game, and all of that is wrapped up in the hand management system. So there's a really crunchy central concept here, which is the multi-use cards. So what you have is this core set of cards where you have every single card in the game is unique. It's unique in artwork and also unique in the effects on the cards. So again, massive replayability. And these cards are broken down into 4 decks. There are battle plans, movement cards, deployment cards, and settle cards. And they're going to let you do let you dig for certain effects, but you're going to get a huge variety of effects within that class. So every time you pick a settle card, you will get a settlement and the ability to settle, but there'll be a huge bunch of other effects and triggers and conditions that will allow you to kind of make a custom state and get the most out of these cards. So the first use of each of those cards is that you have this effect on the card that you're going to try and use. But to play those cards, you need to pay for them with other cards. And so you get this really cool thing where you have to then have this hard choice of which cards you throw away, because you want all these cards. They're all going to be great for something. So you're paying for cards with cards. You've also then got the mythical beast. So as you're exploring around Avalon, you're kind of flipping these exploration tiles over. You're going to be revealing mythical beasts who come out of the mist, and you can gain their allegiance. And so you've got dragons and the White Heart and Trobzar, and all these kind of like these great mythical beings. And if you can kind of win them onto your side, they're going to fight for you, give you their unique abilities. But to get those guys, you have to bid for them with cards. And so you've got this third thing that the cards are doing. Then you've got the initiative system, which is how fast you go in a turn. So whoever has the fastest card will go first. That's the fourth thing that the cards are doing. And then you have the battle plans at the end. So when you get into the war phase, you're also using these cards in battle to be able to augment your battle plans, give yourself a stronger chance of winning those things. So it's like every card has this super crunchy decision of what do you do with this? Because there's 5 things you can do with each one, what you're going to do with it. As I say, trying to make it feel really creamy and crunchy and tense as you go into the game. And you're only playing 3 cards. So what you're trying to do is find that perfect card from this hand of like 8-10 cards and go, which is the right one to play? What is going to give me the maximum strategic advantage I can get? And yeah, so there's that's kind of like a focus on it. So we've got this the idea of this creamy rich game with exploration, and you're doing more than just battling, but you're also preparing for these big strategic fights at the end of the game and fulfilling the prophecies of the lady.
Were there any major like iterations or changes during playtesting on these core mechanics? Like, what would you say was like the like maybe the initial focus, and as you played, you kind of found yourself with where we're at now?
Oh, I've got a rule like that the first playtest of a prototype is an absolute train wreck. They're fantastic. They are just, and actually it's fun because I always kind of have to like do this preamble these days before we start. It's like, guys, this is gonna suck. Like, this is gonna be the worst thing you've ever played, and it's gonna hurt. And I thank you so much for suffering with me through this thing, because what it is with prototypes is you start off with this idea, and you've got this like in your head you have this wonderful idea of all these amazing esoteric concepts and these millions of different mechanisms, and it's all going to be wonderful. And then you get it to the table, you sit down, and it takes 4.5 hours to play. Nobody understood a thing. Nothing seemed to work. There was no flow state whatsoever. And all you got is just like this sense of just utter pain and distress. But what's great about it is that first playtest is fantastic because it gives you a direction. And so you're like, okay, I know this is not where we're supposed to be, but I know the spirit of where we need to go. And then basically the design is just about following this journey through. You don't ever you don't really decide when to stop. The playtesters tell you when to stop because you're just going on a journey. But like, I want to go ahead this way. I want to go this way more. I want to have more tense combat. I want to have more of this. I want to experience more of these prophecy things. I want to see how this Excalibur thing becomes more a key part of the game. How is the Holy Grail playing? Well, I want to find it and I want to go for it. But I don't want to get it straight away. I want to get it at the end of the war phase. And you just have all these kind of journeys with playtests over hundreds of playtests. And eventually you kind of find yourself in this sort of sweet spot where actually you find out everyone's, instead of saying, that was painful, please kill me, it actually turns into, wow, actually it was really enjoyable. Now I'm really getting into this. This is exactly where I want to live. I want to live in this space with this game, which is pretty humbling, really, because it's not really about me, to be honest. It's about the fact that a community of people are prepared to suffer with me as we go in this direction, just trying to find out which way to go. And eventually you find and actually it's interesting because one of the things that tells you you're actually kind of done with the design is when you keep heading off in a direction and finally people start to say, whoa, wait, you went too far, turn around. And so you turn around and go back to where you've come from. And that's actually one of the indicators to say you're kind of nearly done, because you start to try and push out in different directions, and you find that whichever direction you go in, people push you back to the middle, and you go, okay, this space is kind of where we want to be, is being pushed back against this place to somewhere we've already come from, not necessarily journeying into new places. And that's a wonderful part. So you kind of know you're nearly finishing with the design when you start to get a lot of that pushback against trying newer and stranger things, because I'll be coming up with a lot of crazy stuff with these things and keep iterating. I think we had 48 different versions of the combat system in this game.
Wow, that's a ton of versions.
48 different versions. 48. Wow. 48.
Yeah.
And it's been all kinds of stuff, all kinds of crazy. And then you start, but slowly over time, you start to realize, okay, this, and this, and this. So, and it eventually comes down to actually, this is what people really want from this, is what it needs to embody.
Yeah.
And interestingly, like, just so maybe people are watching this and have maybe seen some of the stuff that's been out with some of the reviewers already with the game. But it's interesting that the prototype that they have is actually 6 months old at this point, and so it's actually like 4 versions old now. We've actually moved way
it's
past.
Very interesting being a creator on that aspect when they're like, by the way, we've already changed some of the games, the rule book. We have another rule book coming towards you, because everything is kind of in flow in this early stages of a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, so
but at this point,
developed it for a couple of years, but so it was like it was very nearly done. We knew we were in the right space, but we actually took it on, and we were actually like, it's like tighten. You kind of get this kind of, instead of this loose thing, you end up with this very screwed thing closer to the end, where it's like, it's really tight now. And a lot of actually fun comes in the tightness, weirdly. So you can have a mechanism that is exactly the right mechanism, but if it's not tight enough, it feels kind of, But as you tighten it with balance and you get it really ramped, once you get to that point where it's feeling really sort of secure, that's when people really start to enjoy it, even though before they weren't enjoying it. It was exactly the same mechanism, it's just the balance was the key, and that's where people really start to respond to it in a very strong way.
So to add on to that though, Jamie, then because I know there's also a lot of people who love this type of design and creation idea, how do you as a designer balance complexity and accessibility in a game like this, where you're wanting to have rich, as you said, creamy feeling complexity, but you also want to make sure it's accessible to a wide range of audience members?
Yeah, 100%. Like that's the and I think part of the thing is that when you do professional design, like one of the things I think that often will distinguish kind of like sort of younger designers from when you really start taking the job seriously and getting into a professional is that you stop designing just for yourself, you design for an audience, and you're going, okay, this is for a particular group of people, and you want people to have access to this, and you want it to be it needs to be able to be enjoyed by a spectrum of people. And how do we get to that place with the designs? And so that actually happens as part of very early on in the design, is you're starting to go, okay, is this far too complicated, or is this far too deep? Is this going to be dragging people down or holding people back anyway? And you cut that very quickly, because you know that you want this to be widely available. And often, to be honest, if someone tells you a game has to be super complicated to be good, there's probably a problem there. Because actually, I think we can find that the games that most of us love, really deep down, when you get down to the heart of it, the core of it is quite a simple flow state mechanism that makes you go, I can get into this quite quickly, easily, and enjoy it. And it's just got some depth beyond that enjoyable first space. So finding that key bit is key. And for this, it's like the card system. You're playing 3 cards and you're picking a card, and those things work in it can work in a specific set of systems beyond that, in the exploration, the flipping, the organizing of your armies and things. But that simple thing is quite a core conceit to the game, but there's loads of depth to it in the way that those roll out, because you're reacting to other players, you're reacting to the other cards you have in your hand, and all that sort of jazz. So there's a lot of different additional things you can add to the peripheries of that make it very interesting and crunchy. But at the heart of it, you've got this kind of core simple system. You can also then divide that up with other things, like, for instance, we've got symmetric and asymmetric factions in the game. With symmetric factions, we actually suggest that players start off with that one when you play the game, because it actually gives everybody a unified set of faction powers and abilities that you can use. So the lords are a bit different, but the actual factions are the same, and they're simplified in a way that they are powerful but simple. And so you can actually get into that place. Okay, I'm when you're feeling out all these wider systems like exploration and prophecies and all that jazz, you're able to kind of focus on those big central mechanisms and not worry too much about what's going on in your board, all this kind of asymmetric interaction that's happening. And so that gets you into the wider game. And then it's just like, once you're comfortable with the wider game, flip that board and get the asymmetric stuff out, and then you start getting into a much deeper level of storytelling and uniqueness between the factions, and all these interactions that happen there, where everything's telling a different story. Like, for instance, in the game The Undead, Mordred is basically on a mission. He's been shattered by Excalibur, so he's called the Shattered Sun, and his whole thing is he wants to reform his shattered body and basically become Mordred Ascendant, this Lord of Death who's going to basically just destroy Albion and come back with a vengeance. And so the way he's going to do that, he's going to go around trying nom 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 on a bunch of magical beasts, gain more power. He's then going to try and basically corrupt Avalon, sucking all the magic out of the land like a big slushy, and he's going to turn this whole thing into a big altar of bones where he's going to win a bunch of combats and then pile up all the bodies and start pouring out undead armies into the world. And so that's like what he's doing on the asymmetric side, whereas like the druids, they've got this whole other thing. They're there to protect the land and kind of focus and empower and reinforce the magic that's there. So they're going around the board placing these ley line markers that are around the board in every region, and the more ley lines they place, the more bonuses and benefits they get, and they unlock special abilities based on how much power they get. Eventually, if they get enough power, they actually can actually awaken the Ancient One, and this is their settlement. They have this Stonehenge, but when you awaken it, it rises out of the ground, and it turns out it's this giant henge on the back of this huge monolithic beetle that then can go around the board and create these vortexes and magical hurricanes and like all this cool stuff, and people can teleport to him, and it's just this huge like super beast that you get for the druids. So very different stories. You get a chance to go a bit deeper and make that real thematic kind of even more thematic than it is at the side of the symmetric level.
So kind of looking then at the campaign here, the actual Kickstarter campaign, you are as a designer and a publisher, you guys, once you go live on a campaign, you get a lot of voices talking to you about their ideas about how the game should be played or changes they want to see. So two-part question. One, how do you as a designer and a developer respond to those kind of questions? And are there any actual feedbacks that you've taken that you've seen people say that you go, you know what, maybe that is a good idea. Maybe we might want to incorporate that into our design.
It depends a little bit on how much development has gone into a game before it starts. So there's sort of areas where some things are sealed and some things aren't sealed by the time you come to a campaign. For instance, we're very fortunate. Like from Oathsworn, the success that we had from that meant that we had this wonderful group of playtesters who were really up and excited for kind of playing the next thing we made. And so we had over 300 playtesters on this game, and they've been playtesting the game for about nearly 9 months now. And so we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of playtests of this thing, and so a lot of feedback comes back. So in terms of listening to the community, you've actually got a whole like village of people you're already listening to, and they're a wonderful like litmus test for everything that comes out of the development process. So we're just spending the entire time listening to what they're saying and how they're feeling, whether or not they're enjoying one thing over another. We do a lot of A/B testing. I said a lot of these combat systems, like, do you like this or this better? Do you like this or this better? Which one are you feeling is hitting that mark for you? And obviously we're doing that with a lot of balance and other stuff like that. And so and a bunch of good ideas come out of that. And so we have like a Discord channel where we kind of have these conversations. I'm just in there just chatting to people daily, kind of just getting the thoughts on what people think about this or that, ideas on things being too powerful or not, and maybe different inflections on things. Sometimes what you'll often get is a key voice you're listening to is this kind of so I've got kind of general. If one person says something, it's just an opinion. If two people say something, you've got a line. If three people say something, you've got a pattern, and that's when you've got that pattern is what you're looking for. Is when 2 or 3, 4 people start mentioning it, you're like, this is not anymore just a single person's concept. This is actually this is probably a true statement that's rising up out of these opinions. And often what you then find is that there's something that needs to be addressed. What you do find actually in design, which is quite interesting, often people they're sort of expressing something that they want, but they're not necessarily able to tell you. They will say something like, I think we should do this, we should add this extra we should add this extra thing into the game. But actually, sometimes what people are often thinking about is more that they want to have a particular thing, something special added that they're not able to necessarily communicate very easily, like what it is that they want to get. So it's like they might be saying, I think this combat should be like this or in a particular way, but actually what they're saying is this combat isn't tense enough for me and I want a more tense combat. And so instead of maybe taking the idea that they've come, it's more taking the spirit of the idea. Why are they saying that? And then you kind of follow that through with like 20, 30 people saying, like, okay, this is not tense enough, this thing, we need to add tension, and that's when you go away and then think about what's the best mechanism to add that tension. And sometimes then you can kind of be going backwards and forwards with people saying, because we actually have an internal development team, and then we also have the playtesting team that we're going with. So we're going backwards and forwards with them, trying to pick out, what is the most successful way of getting to that hidden desire that people are manifesting through these considerations. But obviously, by that point, if you think about like something like campaign, we've had thousands of conversations by the time we come to a campaign. And so what often you'll find is when you get into a campaign, and this is wonderful actually, it's really fascinating how you see all these kind of, and I'm sure what they actually are is they're actually designers who haven't been tapped yet as designers. They've got like design spirit. Is they look at the system like, oh, what if we did this? And what's great about that is what you'll nearly always find is they say, oh, what if we did this? What you find is you say, oh, we tried that 9 months ago and it turned out to do it. And then they go, oh, what about this? Oh, we tried that 6 months ago and it wasn't the end point. And they go, oh, what about this? Oh, we tried that 3 months ago and that thing actually worked, and that's actually in the game. It's like, and so you get these what people, you can see these people picking up on this these like design concepts and going, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if we tried that? And it often will tend to be that those are like maybe dead ends or cul-de-sacs that we went down in design and ended up rolling back. So I'll often find myself having to say, great idea, we tried it, didn't actually work. After about 50 playthroughs, we rolled back out of that thing. But it's really wonderful to be able to tell people that we did give it a try and we did actually think for it, because I think people often people assume perhaps that like these things haven't been tried, or like there's never been any effort to try and make that stuff. And maybe there are some games and designs out there, but obviously with the group of playtesters we've had and the time we've had, the effort that's kind of got into it, we've been very fortunate to be able to try out a lot of this stuff. But occasionally, very occasionally within that though, there is something just brand new, some new idea that people bring to you, and you're like, oh, can we bring that in? This especially happens, I find, actually around the product side of things. Like somebody wants like triple layer boards or something like that as a separate add-on to a main pledge that was already having this, and you're like, oh man, that was something that maybe there's actually enough call out for this to do that. And we've actually done that in all of our campaigns at some level or other, ended up adding a component or something that people had wanted.
I think that's been most talked about with like the triple layer player boards, or in a certain pledge level and whatnot, or the discussion about the art book, rule book, and where it's positioned in your campaign, things like that.
And we had this stuff like with the standees and Oathsworn, like people wanted to buy the standees separately from the main game. So even if they had the full miniature game, they also still wanted to buy the standees. And I, at the time, I was like, I wonder why people want to have that. Is that because it's going to be easier to transport or something? Turned out that for the most part, it was actually people wanting reference images for the painting, and they wanted to have they wanted to have a gallery of reference images they could paint from. It's like, oh, cool, that makes a lot of sense.
That's actually why I purchased art books, or at least I used to, was for those reference photos, so that when we painted, we had a kind of an idea of the concept that was originally going for. Yeah,
and that's something that I want to be really sensitive to with the community, because everyone's so good at like the artwork and the painting that they've been doing with these games, and so. I'm really excited to see what people do with these sort of dragons and Arthur and Mordred and stuff. It's going to be so cool to get that at the other end of this.
One of the things I did want to talk about, because we talked about it here, I did a video where I highlighted this, and I did a should you back, and one of the things I thought was interesting was the decision of the art book being combined with the rule book. I haven't seen many game campaigns do that. Why did you what was the inspiration being like, okay, we want to do this, and how do you think it's been perceived by the audience, and is it something you would do in other games?
So the thing that sort of struck me with that was when we so I talked to you about, I've been painting up my Dark Angels army recently, and I was like, it struck me as we would, this is actually something that Games Workshop have been doing for a long time, in terms of like having this sort of deluxe rule book that is also the transmission of the art book.
I can see them behind you, actually.
Yeah, and it really allows you to kind of so the spirit of there was like, it's really about the way that I think about what a deluxe game is, because a deluxe game for me is making the most beautiful, evocative version of a game, right? So you can have the functional version of a game, which is like the standee game. Then you can have this kind of like next level of dimension, which you have with the 3D, with a sort of miniature game, which is then the core experience. And then for me, the deluxe game is the most evocative of all the versions that you have, and you're trying to generate this sense of the spirit of the world. It's much more about, it's like the difference between dinner and dining, right? Like it's that idea. You're having an experience, and so for me, that's really where the thought of the rule book and the deluxe board, that everything that was in that package of deluxe games was going to be a deluxeified thing, which just felt beautiful. It made, when you looked at it, you just went, wow, I'm in this world. I'm going on a ride and a journey here. It's not just a game I'm playing. I'm actually having experience tonight. So you're going through and seeing these evocative images and seeing all that stuff whilst learning the rules. It's kind of part of that journey. So that's really where the spirit of it came from, is testing to see that. And so it's fascinating, because that's been a very well loved kind of thing within the world of tabletop games and things like that, having this sort of more deluxeified rule book and thing. So it's interesting to see if that was going to be something that people would enjoy as well here in the board gaming world, and see if it happens. And so I think there's a lot of people who have really enjoyed it. But I think there's also some people who would like it functionally different. I think what it is really, it's about that ability to be able to customize things even more than people have wanted to. And so maybe having this big list, and this always comes down to actually a really tough decision, which is true of all publishers, which is how many pledge levels do you have?
Yeah, how many SKUs can you make?
Yeah, well, yeah, and how many different ways can you use it?
Yep.
Because what ends up happening is that if you have and this has been sort of been well documented, sort of in the kind of the scholastic like wing of the game publishing kind of world. It's like if you have 15 different reward tiers, it just confuses people because they have to read through every one. They've got to try and work out what this means and what's the difference between it, and it ends up kind of having analysis paralysis on a Kickstarter campaign. I mean, it's bad in a board game, it's bad in a Kickstarter campaign. And so it's that idea of often trying to keep things at a sort of, you have to pick your battles basically at some level. So this is a pledge level, this is a pledge level, this is a pledge level, and so that's what we've done for this one. So maybe in the future I think we probably, as I say, add these extra add-ons as separate things, so like the triple layer boards, being able to have those as an additional thing. And we're actually still trying to get that in right now, so I don't know when someone's watching this, we might have already done it, but it's just one of those things we weren't quite prepared for at the beginning because there was so much excitement to have that just as a standalone add-on. So we're going to see if we can get that in there by the end of the campaign.
That's awesome. Talking then about the grander scope of Avalon, and if there's no answer for this, you could say there's no answer, but are there any expansion plans, or are you planning on, if this, obviously the campaign's successful, maybe in the future expanding upon this, or maybe additional versions of this game?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a bunch of stuff that for several reasons we couldn't get into, one under the time limit of getting it, but also just like in terms of making sense of what was happening with the game at the start point and seeing how much people enjoyed it and what people want. Because so one big thing that I think is really important is not making expansions for the sake of making money, right? Like that's a dangerous game, because your games live and die on whether or not what you actually added was a value thing, not just because you can do that, and it happens a lot. People get a successful game and they say, oh, I can just print add-ons now for the rest of the time and make a load of money. And what happens is eventually at some level you can be gnawing away at the value of your core game by trying to
too much
come up with new ways. Yeah, and they get bloated. So I just really don't want to fall for that. Like saying that, like with Oathsworn, the entire game was in that game. We haven't done any expansions to that game. That game is the game. That's what it was. And there will be other Oathsworn games. There will be, but they're going to be.
You took a question from me there.
but they will be their own game, and that will be the entire design thing. So we're going to spend years designing to a particular experience and not just want to add bit on. And I know that actually for some people that could be a bit upsetting, because they're just like, I just want to have more expansions, I want to have more stuff now to play. But it's like, actually this thing was designed with a very specific vision, and the next one will be too, and so will the next one, and then this whole kind of thing. So with Avalon, it was always kind of right at the beginning, what is it that's going to be appropriate for this game? How much scope is there for expansions? And what we found out right pretty early on is there is some scope for at least one other expansion that we've got planned, and there's also stuff like solo modes and co-op campaign stuff that we can do, which was really cool. We didn't have time to do it, but I'm really kind of interested in what you can do with that system, and having a bigger focus on being able to make that experience, because there's some really cool stuff you can end up doing along that lines, and maybe even a few more factions in the future, like once we've had time to kind of develop them out and do that. So there's stuff coming down the pipe that we're working on that will be sort of an after the game's out, and see how everything goes.
I was going to say, I do feel like I remember at some point in this history of seeing it 1 to 4, and then it became 2 to 4. So was solo mode an original concept that you're working on, and did it just not work as well as you wanted to and you had to cut it out? Or what was the development space for that solo mode?
No, that was just a straight up error.
Okay.
It was a straight up error. You write 1 instead of 2 on a BGG page, and you are stuffed.
happens.
That just went down that way. So as soon as we found out that we fixed it, but it was just one of those things. Because then, of course, as soon as anybody's seen it, then the next time someone says, "I'm sure this had a 1 to 4 player mode. This is."
I know I saw it somewhere.
I know it exactly, and that's it. And so that was definitely our bad on that. There was just literally, your finger moves 2 centimeters, and now you've launched about 50 threads.
So Jamie, then you kind of already alluded to it a little bit, but it's a question I think a lot of people want to know. What is the future for Shadowmore Games, specifically Oathsworn? Are there projects in the line, or what could we expect as consumers who are love the game and want to know if there's more that are in that universe?
Well, I think the game's like the heart of it is we sort of, when we first made the company, we're like, okay, we want to try and make like artisanal games, because the idea was like, we don't care how much it costs. We're going to make these things that are like the dream game, and we're going to trust that people will care enough about these things to come with us to make it worthwhile eventually.
Yeah.
Right? That was the kind of thing. And so it worked with Oathsworn. Right? Oathsworn was just like the most ridiculously expensive game to develop and to make ever. In fact, it got a bit scary at times, but it actually came good in the end. But I really do believe, heart and soul, that to make games that are just like silly high quality, and really a lot of time has been spent on them and trying to do that. And so that's really what the kind of mission, I think, of Shadowborn Games is, to make these sort of wonderful games that are just trying to prove a point of what you can do with quality, and not component creep for the sake of component creep, but more just making a design and a world and like a lore building. This is something that we're doing, like with the updates to the campaign, for instance. We've got reams and reams of lore for all the monsters and the characters in the world and stuff like that, and we've had all this concept work and art done on this game. And it would be easy to just do a throwaway like character, a throwaway dragon or a throwaway thing, just say, look, this is what's in the game because it's an Arthurian mission, you need a dragon. But actually just building out a world, and people go, yeah, there's something actually here that you can kind of get in, and knowing, because I think that's what a big part of what makes people excited for a game is the theme. But right behind the theme is this idea that there's a bigger world you can get involved in. There's a story you can get here, and you're actually playing into a story and an opportunity to play it. And so this idea of Mordred trying to bring his body back together, and Guinevere's trying to find the once and future king, her husband, and bring him back from the dead so he can fight Mordred in the final battle for Ethelogos, the heart and the forge of Ethelogos, where all the magical artifacts of Albion are ever forged by a single troll called Trobzar, who is like, and you've got this sort of these stories that come out. And so really building that kind of, like, to be honest, I'm just an old like dungeon master geek, and I just want to make more weird stuff and create more ideas and things like that, and try and make games that thematically tie in with these kind of interesting worlds.
So,
but yes,
as I wrap up the interview here, because we're coming up to our 40-minute kind of discussion point, I want to give you an opportunity then to just talk about what you think is important, that you think the audience members or people who are interested in this campaign, who are interested in this game, what do you want them to know about your game?
Well, it's a few things that are worth noting if you're interested in this sort of thing. So one, we're doing daily unlocks every day. We've got contests and votes and things like that. We're currently voting on the name of a giant snail that is slowly creeping its way across Avalon. It's about the size of a small mountain. It has this weird stuff inside. There's like a host of things inside it moving around, and it's kind of like rejuvenating the land with its slime. And we're currently naming that. We've got all kinds of different unlocks coming through. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye on these unlocks. There's some really cool stuff coming down, and new models every day. We've got like over 65 new miniatures coming into the game, like new aspects to the game that are coming out as well. A 5th player expansion that's coming to the game by the end of the campaign. So there's a bunch of good stuff there. So that's worth keeping an eye on. Also, it's worth knowing that the campaign is a Shadowborn exclusive game. And so what that means is that there is a retail version of the game, which is a standard version, which will be able to be purchased at sort of retail wider distribution. But in terms of the kind of deluxe games, the all-ins, the core games where you get these big stretch goals and all that, these are Shadowborn exclusive. What this is going to mean is that the only place for you to get this is going to be the campaign that we build, and then on our web shop and at conventions, sort of like directly for us. So that helps us like be able to say, look, we're going to honor the backers and keep the price good, so that then like when we say we're going to give you a discount, it's true, because we will be enforcing that on our website at the other end. So it's a good reason to back now, because it really is cheaper here. It's a great chance to kind of be the first to get the game as well. And so this Shadowborn exclusive is worth knowing about, because it may be a little bit different from some of the ways that other games are sold in that way. But yeah, that's worth doing. We're actually still running until December 10th, so we've got a few more weeks left. Yeah. So if you want to come and join us, we're having a bit of fun over at the campaign, and that's Avalon the Riven Vale over on Kickstarter.
Awesome. I appreciate you, Jamie, for taking the time to talk with me. And again, thank you for our viewers for watching the video. My name is Brian, Jamie Jolly with Shadowborn Games, and we will talk to you very soon.